Hello, welcome to the last segment of our diabetes class. In this segment, I'm going to be talking about meal planning for diabetes prevention and management and label reading in a little bit more detail. In the previous segments that I've done, I've talked about carbohydrates and everything you need to know about them for diabetes prevention and management, as well as types of fat and sodium in our diet and how they impact our heart health and overall health for diabetes. So I hope that you were able to watch the previous segments. If not, you can go back and watch them, or feel free to go back and watch them at any time that you want to just remember what we covered in those segments. So when it comes to planning meals for diabetes prevention and management, I always emphasize using the plate method, which is based on balance. It's a tool that you can use to help ensure that you're getting the variety of food your body needs in good proportions to optimize your health. You may also find that when you eat meals at a regular time throughout the day, you can have lasting energy that helps you feel satisfied until your next meal or snack. The plate method is a way to visualize how to balance your plate. Divide your plate into 3 sections. Have a quarter of your plate reserved for your grain or starches. Rice, pasta, potatoes, or corn can go in that quarter of a plate. The other quarter of your plate is reserved for your protein food, so your fish, lean meat, chicken, beans, lentils, tofu, nuts or seeds are all protein foods that you can incorporate there. Half of your plate is reserved for vegetables. You can fill up half of your plate with vegetables to help keep you full. They don't affect your blood sugars significantly. They're great to get lots of beneficial vitamins, minerals, and disease-preventing factors. And then on the side of the plate, there's a glass of milk, which helps promote bone health by providing calcium and vitamin D. If you choose not to consume dairy or milk, plant-based alternatives like a soy milk would provide a similar amount of protein as milk and also provide the calcium, vitamin D benefits, as well as a piece of fruit. So that might look like a lot of food to you, or maybe a lot of food for a meal earlier in the day. If that's too much to eat at one meal, you could consider breaking that up and still trying to eat that balance, but at different times through the day. So planning to have a mid-morning snack if you ate half of that for your breakfast and maybe kept the milk and the fruit for a snack later on in the morning, or dairy product like a yogurt or soy milk with a piece of fruit later on as a snack. Certainly using this plate method and aiming to eat every 4 to 6 hours is one way to help you feel satisfied and regulate your blood sugars throughout the day. If you find this is not enough food for you to eat, this is a starting point, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more here in our portion sizes. So a big question many people I work with ask is, what type of food should I be eating, and in how much of these foods should I be eating? And that is a tricky question to answer because everyone has different energy needs based on their activity level, their age, that can change from day to day as well as just their natural metabolism plays into that. So the best tool to identify if you are getting enough and getting the right amount of food for your body is to listen to your body. And it can be a challenge to learn to trust your body, to tell you how much you need to eat. And it can take a lot of practice to start to learn to listen or to hear what your body's telling you. A lot of people lose that recognition of when they're hungry and full because of years of certain habits. There's lots of distractions in our world. You might be really busy at work and you just keep working, and you might feel hungry for a minute, and then you just get started working on something more and you ignore that hunger, and then eventually 3 hours after that, you realize, I'm starving. I haven't eaten anything. As well as when we're eating, maybe you're distracted while you're working in front of a screen, or maybe you're watching TV when you're eating your supper, and you might not realize when you've had enough to eat. You just keep eating because there's stuff on your plate, and that's your habit. But it is possible to regain your skills to listen to your hunger and fullness. Starting point I encourage you to do is maybe use that plate method as a starting point to portion out your meal, and then go ahead and start eating before you eat. I want you to pause and think about your hunger, and you can rank your hunger on a scale of 1 to 5. So 1 would represent being absolutely famished, you're very hungry, you need to eat something right now. And a 2 would be that you're hungry, you're ready to eat. 3 is that you're starting to feel satisfied. 4 is satisfied. 5 is where you feel overfull, like a Thanksgiving dinner, ate a lot of food, or went to all-you-can-eat sushi and ate way too much food, and that's where you're feeling just stuffed. I think we've all had experiences on all ranges of that scale. So think back to those times. And then before you eat, check in with your hunger before that meal and rank yourself. Then begin to eat. After you've maybe made it about partway through your meal, pause again and assess where you feel your hunger feels. Are you feeling satisfied? Are you full now? Do you need to eat more to really feel satisfied? Maybe you want a few more bites because it just tastes so good and you're not satisfied yet. Go ahead and eat and finish your plate, or finish until you're done. Maybe have more if you want that. And then assess your fullness at the end of that meal. Are you feeling stuffed now? Or are you feeling that you still need more? And going through that process can help you cue into how your body tells you that you're hungry and full. And if you explore that with curiosity, not with judgment, it's okay to eat till you're overfull, by all means. That would just be some information that you could use to learn from. And I hope that you can practice this and learn to listen to your body to know how much you need to eat. If you want help with this process, or if you discover some things like, I just find that I keep eating until I'm overfull, or I'm finding that I'm eating even though I'm not hungry, maybe there's some other factors at play there. And if you'd like some more assistance, please reach out to me. I'd love to help you with this and help you with trying to listen to your body to eat the right amount for you. But some guidelines as well about portion sizes when you're building that plate. Again, with the quarter of a plate of your starches, that can look like a fist, your starches, so a fist of brown rice. When it comes to half a plate of vegetables, that can look like a great big handful, or 2 scoops of vegetables. A quarter of your plate of protein can look like the size of the palm of your hand, the thickness of your pinky finger. Fruit is about a fist-size fruit, so it could be a fist-size apple, or if you have a very large apple, maybe half that apple. If you have a very large banana, half that banana, or depends on the size of the fruit. There's a lot of variability at the stores. And then for added fats, consider adding that at every meal to help with your blood sugar management, helps you keep you satisfied, gives you energy. That unsaturated fat, adding that in protects your heart health. Aim for about a thumb size of added fats, or about a tablespoon. When it comes to planning meals, here are some examples using the plate method to help you visualize what that can look like. So this is an example of a breakfast. You can see on the before picture here, there's kind of a large breakfast, maybe a Saturday morning bacon, or sausage, and English muffin, and large portion of eggs, a little bit of vegetables. If you wanted to make over that meal to become more like the plate method, you might consider adding a lot more vegetables, filling up or fruit in this case, filling up half that plate with fruit. There's now only 1 slice of English muffin, and it's a whole wheat English muffin, and a little bit less eggs. The sausage has been removed. It could be incorporated if that was a Saturday morning special treat for you. You don't eat it necessarily every day. You could have the sausage, but maybe instead of 4 pieces, you might just have 3 slices or 2 slices, and that would be in place of the eggs for the protein, or maybe less eggs, a bit less sausage together to form that quarter of a plate of protein. There's a glass of milk now added to the coffee that's on the side. Maybe you enjoy a latte or cafe au lait. You can mix that coffee and milk together, or just drink it on the side separately. That adds extra protein, gives you your calcium, vitamin D. This is a lunch that's based on the plate method. It's a tuna salad with some mayo there's about a teaspoon or a couple teaspoons of mayo on the side there, a few pieces of whole grain Melba toast crackers, and half that plate is filled with a salad. There's some fruit and milk on the side there to help fill out that meal. And this is a supper. You can see there's a piece of steak. It's maybe a smaller piece of steak that was grilled. It kind of looks like it's been cut in half. Some cuts of meat that you get from the store are just very large, maybe more than that palm of your hand size that I recommended as a starting point to consider. And maybe cutting it in half would be more appropriate to meet your needs. And by limiting that portion of your red meat, that's also cutting down on the saturated fat intake. There's a quarter of that plate reserved for the brown rice there. And on the side, you can see there's a fruit and a milk or a yogurt, and there's half a plate of vegetables incorporated into that meal as well. So these are just some examples of a breakfast, lunch, and dinner. There's certainly a lot of variety of foods that can be used to meet these compartments. And I encourage you, if you want to start using the plate method for your meals, don't necessarily work about changing the types of food that you're eating, but maybe just incorporating some different things that might be missing. For example, if you eat a lot of frozen dinners or frozen pizzas or chicken fingers, that sort of thing, or French fries, go ahead. Just keep eating those, but maybe add in more vegetables to make that more balanced. Have that half a plate of vegetables. Maybe modify how much of the French fries and the chicken fingers that you eat, or if you have a piece of pizza, that could be your starch as well as your protein. Maybe you need a bit more protein as well. If it's a frozen dinner, some frozen dinners have not a lot of meat in them and a lot more starch, so not a lot of vegetables. So maybe you can add some extra protein by adding a glass of milk to that and adding more vegetables on the side of the frozen dinner and incorporating a fruit to that meal as well. That can make it a balanced meal, even though it's still the same processed food that you may be used to eating. And that's a great place to start and can have a positive effect on your health. So this is an exercise for you to practice making over a meal to make it more balanced. How would you make this breakfast example more balanced? And I encourage you to think back on the plate method that we just explained, healthy fats, fiber. So the breakfast here listed is a cup of Rice Krispies, half a cup of 2% milk, and a large coffee with 2 cream and 2 sugar. So maybe pause here for a minute to think about how you would change this. I will now proceed to the next slide where there's an example of how I would make over this meal to make it more balanced. So this is the balanced meal. It's suggested to cut down on the amount of cereal. So instead of a full cup of cereal, there's 3/4 of a cup of a high fiber cereal, such as oatmeal or all bran. Instead of 2% milk, we've switched that to a 1% milk. And instead of just half a cup, I've boosted that up to 1 cup. I've added a cup of blueberries, so added in that fruit to fill up kind of that half a plate in this example. Added a 1/4 cup of almonds to incorporate some unsaturated healthy fats as well as some protein to this meal. And removed some of the cream and the sugar from the coffee and switched it to have it with milk or with black. Certainly as you adjust your coffee drinks, that can be a sensitive area for people, and it might not be realistic to drink it black, but maybe instead of 2 cream and 2 sugar, just 1 cream and 1 sugar, right? Just figuring out how it works best for you. Oops. So now I'm going to take a minute to move on to label reading, which we did review some stuff in the sodium video segment. However, I'm going to talk a little bit more about focusing in on label reading for carbohydrates in this segment. So just to review, the first step when you're reading a label, I encourage you to look at the serving size and consider how much you will eat. You might be eating more than that or less than that, which means you'd then be consuming more or less of the nutrients that are listed on that nutrition facts panel. Use that percent daily value to find out if there's a lot or a little of a nutrient in a food. So 5% or less is considered a little, 15% or more is considered a lot. And then choose the nutrient. So saturated fat, trans fat, sodium, and sugar, those are things you want less of. Fiber, calcium, iron, vitamin A are all things you want more of. So choosing foods that are higher than 15% are great options. Certainly not all foods are going to meet all of those criteria, but those are some guidelines to help you choose the best choice for you. And certainly when you're making food choices in the store, I certainly understand it's not all about what the nutrition's made of. It depends on the cost and the flavor, but within those constraints, try to make the choice that is best for your health and that will work for you and make you satisfied as well. So I'm going to go through an example of reading the labels on 3 different types of bread that you can find in the grocery store and comparing them. And then with that information, you can then decide what maybe would be a best choice for you, considering your health needs and considering if you want to prevent diabetes and manage your diabetes. Certainly there's no right or wrong answer, but this can hopefully give you some helpful information when you're trying to figure this out in the grocery store yourself on how you can make that choice. So the one on the left-hand side of the screen is the Dinkelmeyer bread. It's a monastery rye bread. There's a stone ground bread in the middle, and then a country harvest fiber bread. So the first thing I've highlighted on this slide is the portion sizes. So you can see for the Dinkelmeyer bread, it's still on the left, is per 1 slice, which has about 51 grams. The stone mill bread has 2 slices per serving, and that's about 60 grams. And 1 slice is the serving size on the country harvest bread, which is about 45 grams. So they're a little bit different in terms of the amount, but pretty similar. And when you think of the size of the bread, that makes sense. The stone milled bread is a smaller slice of bread, whereas the rye bread is quite a large oval slice. So those are things to keep in mind if you were going to make a sandwich. The Dinkelmeyer one, if you were going to choose 2 slices of that bread, you would definitely be consuming a lot more than if you had a sandwich with the stone milled with the 2 slices. Maybe you could cut the Dinkelmeyer bread in half if you did choose that bread and make a sandwich out of 1 slice. All things to consider. Now, looking at the carbohydrate section in particular, since we're going to focus on that in this section, you can see that the carbohydrate content of the Dinkelmeyer bread is 26 grams. There's 2 grams of fiber in the product and 0 grams of sugar. The fiber is 6% daily value, so that's pretty close to the 5%, which is considered a little. The stone mill bread is 23 grams of carbohydrate per 2 slices. It has 7 grams of fiber, which is about 27%. So that's definitely considered a high amount of fiber. It's over 15%. And then the sugars is 0. And then for the country harvest bread, you can see that there are 21 grams of fiber and 21 grams of carbohydrates, 8 grams of fiber, and 2 grams of sugar. I'm going to talk about the sugar a little bit in the next slide. If you can remember back to my first video segment, I did say it's hard to just figure out how much added sugar is in a product just from the grams of sugar. So we are going to look at the ingredient list next. But for now, we'll just hold on to that one. Some people see that, oh, this one has some sugar in it, so that's not a good choice for me. But let's look at the story a little bit more closer. So the total carbohydrate number, which is this carbohydrate right here, I'm highlighting it with my mouse here on our screen. It says 26 grams. That number refers to all of the fiber that's in that product added to the sugars and all of the starch in that product, which is the other part of carbohydrates that can get digested into glucose and absorbed into our bloodstream. However, the starch content is not listed on the nutrition facts panel, but we do know that it affects our blood sugars. So if you want to know how much of this total carbohydrate number that's going to affect your blood sugars, you subtract the fiber, the special carbohydrate that doesn't get digested into sugar in our blood and absorbed into our bloodstream as sugar. You subtract that number, so 2 grams, subtracted from the total carbohydrate content, which gives us 24 grams of carbohydrates. That'll be 24 grams of sugar and starch. And that's the amount of carbohydrates that will be turned into sugar in our blood. So 24 for one slice on the Dinkelmeyer. If you do the same thing, you subtract 7 grams of fiber from the 23 grams of carbohydrate in the stone mill, you are left with 16 grams of carbohydrates per 2 slices. And then in the country harvest bread, you subtract 8 grams of fiber from the 21 grams of carbohydrates, and that gives you 13 grams of carbohydrates per slice. So when you're thinking of which type of bread will be lower in carbs that will affect your blood sugars less, you can see that the country harvest and stone milk breads have less carbohydrates because they have more fiber, even though it doesn't necessarily look like the country harvest would be the best choice because it's got sugar in it. It's still, the amount that's going to affect your blood sugars is still lower compared to the rye, which doesn't have sugar, but isn't necessarily the best choice because it's also low in fiber. So I hope this exercise helps you see how the higher fiber bread can help you keep regular blood sugar levels in your target range because it'll raise your blood sugars less than the lower fiber bread. If you have any questions about this, please feel free to email me or get in touch with me by phone so I can explain this. But I do, because this can sometimes be a little bit confusing. But the key point there is to remember to subtract the fiber content from the carbohydrate when comparing your bread products or any product that contains a lot of carbohydrates to help you choose a better product that might be more beneficial to incorporate in your diet so you don't consume maybe too much carbohydrates at any one meal. Because generally, if you're having a sandwich, you'd probably be having 2 slices of bread, which is certainly okay, but sometimes can lead to a high amount of carbohydrates. In general, high fiber is a good choice. And if you are curious about the type of sugar in your, or if there's added sugar in your bread products or any food product that you're choosing, we then go to look at the the ingredient list. So sugar, glucose, fructose, you can see is listed as the 7th ingredient in our country harvest bread. So that is not considered high in added sugar, since the sugar source is not listed as one of the first 3 to 5 ingredients. So yes, it does have some added sugar, but it's not a high amount of sugar. It's still a fine choice. The stone mill bread, you can see, has raisin juice concentrate added quite a bit down. I'm not sure how many ingredients down, but certainly not one of the first 3 to 5 ingredients in this bread. So it's also a fine choice. And the Dinkelmeyer one, if you read the ingredients, there's no sugar added to that product. And this is also an example of how sugar can be listed in different forms. So this is sugar and glucose fructose. All of those words mean sugar. And raisin juice concentrate, that's a bit trickier, but the juice is considered an added sugar. But if you do remember, even though that ingredient's there, the middle or stone milled bread still has 0 grams of sugar. So it is a very low amount of added sugar in that bread. So to summarize, of these bread choices, after we've gone through the different labels and we've gone through carbohydrate and fiber for these breads and looked at the ingredient list, the rye bread, which many people think is a good choice or is the best choice for them, maybe isn't. The country harvest or stone milled ones that have higher fiber are going to be better choices depending on which ones you enjoy. And the last piece that I will highlight, as we talked about sodium in our last video, and bread products can be a surprisingly high source of sodium in your diet. So let's look at that before we make our final choice here. So sodium for the stone milled bread here is 9%. That's kind of in the middle range. Not low sodium, but it's not high either, but mid-range. In the country harvest, you can see sodium's only 5%. So maybe that would be the better choice in the end if you were trying to lower your sodium intake as well. So I just want to review some take-home messages, summarizing all of the messages in my 3 video segments that I did. So a key way to manage your diabetes is try to eat 3 meals a day. Aim to eat every 4 to 6 hours to keep your blood sugars regular or in the target range, and aim to have a similar amount of carbohydrates at all of those eating occasions. So at your breakfast, lunch, and dinner, try to just keep that carbohydrate amount that you're eating the same at each meal. Choose higher fiber carbohydrates like whole grains, fruits, vegetables, and dried beans or canned beans often, and limit lower fiber carbohydrates like juice, pop, candy, honey, sweets, white flours, as they can raise your blood sugars really quickly and make it hard to have overall blood sugar control in the target range. Aim to have balanced meals and snacks, thinking about the plate method that we've reviewed in this segment here. Aim to have more unsaturated fats in your diet, more often than saturated and trans fats. And make sure you're using food labels and nutrition facts panels and those ingredient lists to help you choose which items can be the best for you and your health, and which ones may have the most benefit for your health. So at this time, I want you to reflect on what you've learned and on your current habits. And again, if there is something you want to add to your habits or change, consider setting a SMART goal. A SMART goal is one that's specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and has a time frame. So, for example, if you wanted to set a goal around eating a balanced breakfast, for example, maybe you'll choose to add a fruit to your breakfast every morning, or maybe even just eating breakfast every morning for the next week. Is that realistic? Well, that'll depend on your situation, but evaluate that and then go ahead and try it. After 2 weeks, set a reminder in your phone to check back on that meal or ask a friend or a family member to check in with you to see how that's going and evaluate it. Did it work well for you? Were you able to achieve your goal? If so, give yourself a pat on the back and maybe consider if there's something else you want to add to your habits to help improve your health. If that didn't go well for you, maybe think through that and what went well or what didn't go well. What did go well that you can build on, or maybe there's a better area for you to start working on right now. Maybe that's not a good, eating breakfast might not be the area you're able to make a change in right now. But maybe is another area. Maybe modify that goal or change to a different goal and try it again. Certainly this is a great way that you can help build long-term healthy habits that can have a big impact on your overall health in the long term. And through doing this process, you're able to create change that you can sustain. So thank you for listening to the segment today. If you have any questions or concerns, please contact myself or Lisa. I apologize. I see that this slide is an older one, so let me just skip back to the slide that includes our contact information. So unfortunately, the current situation with COVID-19, we're not offering one-to-one in-person appointments, but you are welcome to call the Stratford Family Health Team and set up a phone appointment with myself or Lisa at 519-273-7017. Or you can email myself or Lisa at the email addresses listed on this slide, and we'd be happy to take your call or take your message and answer your questions through that way as well. I hope you take care and stay safe, and please feel free to review any of these messages or video segments at any time to just reinforce and help you remember what you've learned.